America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Jordan Bruno, Vice President of Job Creators Network.
And I'm Tony Angelini, Senior Vice President of Advocacy and Operations for Job Creators Network.
Please subscribe to the show at SalemPodcastNetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Today we're joined by Mark Weinstein. Mark is a tech entrepreneur, thought leader, privacy expert, and one of the very first pioneers of social networking. He is also the author of the new book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework. Mark, welcome to Main Street Matters.
Guys, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here. And I'm very excited for all of our people who are watching and listening. This is going to be a great conversation.
Great. Well, Mark, why don't you just start by giving our listeners a little bit of your background and talk about your new book you've just published.
Sure. Everybody listen. So I've written a book called Restoring Our Sanity Online, a revolutionary social framework. But let's frame the book. So I am one of, there's probably 100 of us, one of the original inventors of social networking back in the 90s. And I continued. So I built Superfamily and Super Friends back in the late 90s, PC Magazine top 100 sites. I continued, that was Web 1 and Web 2 with MeWe, which also won many awards and is still around. I left MeWe about 2.5 years ago because the problem that we need to solve is bigger than one company can do. And so, here I am, and I'm published around the world. I'm one of the world's leading privacy experts and advocates. It doesn't matter where your politics are, because this is really about capitalism when it works and democracy when it works, and social media, which connects us authentically and enriches and makes our lives better. And that's really what social media was invented for. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's what the book talks about fixing with, I've got 26 years in the trenches of social media. So there are some remarkable stories, jaw-dropping stories in this book that you're all going to love.
Well, why don't you tell us, you touched a little bit on what the original vision of social media was, bringing us together even though we're far apart. Maybe elaborate on that a little bit if you'd like. And then why don't you talk about what social media has morphed into and kind of the biggest problems that you see of the current model?
Well, just to get there for a second, there's something called surveillance capitalism, everybody. You've probably heard the phrase and not really sure what it means. And this is really about how we are spied on every second of every moment that we're online. And our data is aggregated into a huge data ecosystem. There are thousands of pages of data on each one of us. A reporter once looked into it. Just on Meta alone, he found 60,000 pages that Meta showed him of data on him. I have a TED Talk called The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism. And here's the good news. Like my book, I like to write punchy, interesting things. The TED Talk is 9 minutes. The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism. And you'll love it. It's entertaining because we want to be entertained and we want to be able to laugh, because life is perfect in its imperfection. So what we started in Web 1. Now, Web 1, and a friend of mine is Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the web back in '89. So, just put that in context, the web is 35 years old. It's actually very young. It's a very young technology. And fast forward to the late 90s, and, then the internet is born. And what we can do with all of this, and this great communication technology is born way beyond email, which was already ghastly in the 90s. If you don't like email today, don't worry, we didn't like it in the late 90s either. So Web 1 was pure capitalism. It's, find new ways to delight people in the world, and you can be very successful. Capitalism, when it really works well, is all about delighting your customer, and then you get to have a successful business. And we see this time and again. So that's Web 1. And so we all were there, and I was there right at the beginning. There were a bunch of us inventing these new community portals, we called them. And the idea then was get the eyeballs, get the users. That's all the investors cared about, because nobody really knew how we were going to monetize. What was the revenue model? So it was called the new economy. Well, we were just all focused on getting users. As I said, Super Family and Super Friends got lots of users and became top sites ranked by PC Magazine. There's a problem. Nobody was making money. Investors were betting on money being made later, and all of a sudden investors got cold feet. And we were done. The whole industry wasn't ready to shift to, okay, here's how we monetize. So in 2001, really, this is how it worked. The emotions of investors changed. Cold feet, investors stop putting money in. And if you have no revenue, but you got lots of users, but you're dependent on investors. Thousands of companies went out of business over a period of a very few months. Web 1 ends. Web 2 is born. And very shortly thereafter, it takes a few years to get it sort of sea legs and, stop wobbling. And this is the era where MySpace comes into existence and social media we're talking. Because remember, even other companies, drugstore.com, all these great companies went out of business because none of them were making money. They were all dependent in Web 1 on investors. Web 2, there's a new model. What happens is the founders of Web 2 look at all the data that they can get from their users. And Google is born, and Facebook is born. And these companies realize, wow, we can get data. We can target our users. We can make advertising so efficient because we're going to know what you want before you know it. We're going to read everything you write. We're going to see who you're talking to. We're going to see where you are. And we're going to start to, insert recommendations, coupons, ads, purchase, everything into your news feeds. And so, voila, surveillance capitalism is born. Now, at first, it seemed kind of cool. So if you're old enough to remember this, and remember, if you're 30 today, then you were part of the MySpace and Facebook generation from the beginning. But if you're just, 10, 12, 13, you're also part of this whole era. So now we have a massive number of people, including everybody older than 30, who's part of it. And all of our data is being tracked, collected, aggregated, analyzed, stored, and used against us. And I say that, used against us, because what happens to it is Meta, Google, everybody, they allow advertisers, marketers, political operatives, trolls, bots, anybody who has a credit card to target us. And so now with AI, I'm just going to fast forward this conversation with AI. This data, these analytical models are so sophisticated that they literally can anticipate what you're going to think next before you think it. They can do what's called A/B testing in nanoseconds and keep you addicted to your screens. Now, some of you probably have seen your parents, your uncles, your grandparents. People are now really hooked. It's not just kids. We're all hooked on our screens because the algorithm is so smart with AI that its job is to keep us hooked with content that's boosted, with ads, marketing, with everything, so that we can't put the phone down. So really, this is surveillance capitalism. It's gotten off course. Instead of serving users, users are now the products. We're the product that's sold to the advertiser, marketer, political operative, governments, etc. They're the customer that Meta serves.
So, Mark, in terms of, you're sort of touching on the weaponization of these platforms and the sort of the distribution of our information to the highest bidder. We're a week away from an election. I hate when people say this is going to be the most consequential election, because I think all elections are consequential. But I think the one thing that this year is really demonstrating is the impact that social media is having on it. You have candidates for the office now who are going completely outside the mainstream media and existing, some days more than others, almost exclusively within the social media space. How are sort of the general, American voters being impacted by everything that's going on behind the scenes and the sort of financial power that is being yielded by both sides?
It's such a good question, everybody, because it's financial power on both sides, which allows, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars really to be spent, inserting conversations into your news feed, including, purported news, topics, etc. And then it's supercharged by bots and trolls of adversarial countries. There's been plenty of data and plenty of, the FBI, CIA, our government has identified, different initiatives supporting either candidate for president. And so there are adversarial countries who are, also spending money to sort of manipulate our election. So one of the issues that we have to deal with, and I have some op-eds coming out this week, both in The Hill and in Newsweek, about how we're going to have to fix this mess. It's not going to get fixed before next Tuesday. But we've got to get the bots and trolls out. We've got to get boosted content out so that and we've got to get critical thinking back. It's almost, and I say almost, but virtually impossible for your critical thinking mind to function properly when artificial intelligence is working around the clock to boost things into your newsfeed to make you think one way or the other. And that's compounded by the campaigns doing the same thing. And it's compounded by adversarial countries doing the same thing. So essentially, and of course, if you're a small business person, you're just getting drowned out right now anyhow. It's just, very hard to get your message across. But what's happening, Tony, is that we're all confused. And here's what I tell people. In America, democracy depends on disagreement. So don't worry about disagreement if all of a sudden you're kind of freaked out by all of it. No, the backbone of democracy is disagreement, but it's civil. It's civil discourse is the backbone of democracy. And in this country, we don't really hate each other. We've been made to hate each other. These adversarial countries want us to hate each other. They want democracy to evaporate, to be damaged. So, you want to stand tall with your neighbors who might be on the other side. You want to get together and say, guys, this is our country. This is why democracy works. We don't go to jail for having a different opinion. We're allowed to. We're allowed to put signs on our lawns about whoever or whatever issue we support or don't support, and we're allowed to have them stay there without interruption. We want to remember, civil discourse is the key to a functioning democracy. And in the future, and we've got to get here now, but it won't be this week, we have to move away from boosted content. We're going to have to regulate AI better. We can use AI to help us. And Tony, what we're going to have to do is get user ID verification. And for anybody listening, I'm very conservative about privacy. Privacy is a fundamental right for citizens in democracy. But anonymity, we're going to have to throw it out because they already know who we are. The government, Meta, Google, the dark web, because data on 220 million Americans is for sale in the dark web. Thank you, Meta, for having very bad engineering. So the Cambridge Analytica scandal 6 years ago released all that data. So what we want to do is make sure that bots and trolls can't function online anymore, and that boosted content can't function online anymore. This is all in my book, Restoring Our Sanity Online, and I roadmap exactly how we get there. And everybody, it's not that tough. The last company I built, MeWe, which still exists, already does that. User Privacy Bill of Rights. And I'm no longer at MeWe, so I'm not representing that company. I left it 2.5 years ago. because we've got a big problem to solve. And here's the thing. We can do it. All of us together, we take our power back. So, the monopolies, the Meta, the Googles, even the X's, they're all, they're monopolizing, the airwaves. And we can take it back and still be members. We just have to control our news feeds and get the bad actors out, which is all doable. And we're going to need the government help. So whether you're pro or against government, it doesn't matter. Government is tasked with supporting capitalism. The free market economy works in democracies when the government enforces its antitrust regulations. And we saw that recently. The government found Google guilty of antitrust infringement in a massive way. The government has a big case against Meta right now. And as these cases work their way through, we will be able to get new things. The inventor of the web has invented something called pods. We're going to take control of our data. This is all coming. It's right around the corner in the next 2 or 3 years. And there's many things you can do as parents and business owners right now, too.
Speaking of business owners, you're talking about, boosted content being part of the problem. I think it really is a double-edged sword because, if you are a small business owner, the ability to boost something that, you want your customer base to see locally is going to be impactful. And it's just another sort of form of marketing, like a flyer in the mail or an ad in a local newspaper. Obviously we all see that the bots and just sort of the extreme craziness that you're seeing on a lot of our social media feeds, especially these days. How do you sort of regulate something that can be useful especially for small business owners?
Well, and this is the thing, everybody, this is actually pretty simple. You've got to just get people to opt in. And I don't mean listen, this is your job as a business owner. I'm an MBA, I'm a business owner. And what you want to do, just like all of these, newsletters and everything online, whether you're a big retailer or you're a small business person, build your list and continue to build your list and be very innovative. Find ways to continue to build your list so that you can target people directly and they choose it. This is the key. And the web is moving this way anyhow when it comes to different, real authentic marketing. And those are the customers you want. So first of all, you document who your customers are. And they opt in because they've actually made a purchase. They've come to your site. They've come to your store. And that's the most effective marketing. We know that the most effective marketing is not when you go on a big fishing expedition, but when actually you're figuring out exactly how to get opt-in. And in the future, when users will be able to choose and they'll control their data and they'll choose what they're seeing in their newsfeed, and it'll be timeline order. And, even in your email right now, if you have a Gmail account, promotions are in one place, your main feed's in another place. So, and capitalism needs advertising. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big capitalist, but I'm all about serving my users, serving my readers, serving people authentically so that we can have civil discourse, so that the vision of social media was to make us, more compassionate, more loving, more connected with our family and friends, find like-minded people, learn new ideas. In Web 1, there weren't bots and trolls, and no one was paying to boost content into my feed. So, we just want to have some common sense about all this, Tony. And for a good business owner, common sense works great.
Yep. Wise words to close us out. Mark, where can our listeners find more about your book and more about you and maybe follow your op-ed and your other writings as well?
Immediately, I have a website, everybody, markweinsteininventor.com, and it's MarkWeinstein, inventor.com. You can find me there. You can find the book wherever books are sold, Restoring Our Sanity Online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you don't find it on the shelves at your local bookstore, you can order it. Of course, you can just order it online right now. It's also available on Kindle. If you want to email me, you want to talk, you have an idea, whatever, Mark, M-A-R-K, at restoretheweb.com. So I also have an X account. It's Mark Weinstein. That's generally used for private messaging. But you can see, certainly we post all of my op-eds and everything I publish there. But I'm not curating a big following. I had a big following inside MeWe, about 20 million people. But you can find everything you want about me in those areas. And I encourage you to buy the book for your employees. This is really important stuff. And it's also a great read. You can check out the reviews on Amazon because I have a sense of humor. So the stories you're going to read are jaw-dropping and hilarious. So, and also plenty of action plans for all of you who are parents.
Well, that's great. Good sense of humor is always the hallmark of a great writer. So we'll look forward to getting that picked up. Mark, thank you very much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. And thank you all for taking the time to listen. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network, and new episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. Please subscribe at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back soon with another episode.